Bill finally gave the Ringers Philly Crew a podcast. I'm Ben Solak.
And I'm Sheil Kapadia. That's right, just a couple of Philly guys with a new space to fire off some Eagles takes, get caught up in the Sixers chaos, and more.
We'll be coming to you twice a week on Sundays and Thursdays, plus bonus episodes whenever we get breaking news or Philly drama.
Join the fun and follow the Ringers Philly special now on Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day, or hiking, or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Read, Write, Own, Building the Next Era of the Internet, a new book from entrepreneur and startup investor Chris Dixon. If you're listening to this podcast, you know what it's like to be part of a community of fans. You value the people who play, perform, and create for everyone. Well, what if there are more ways to support them, more ways to be a fan? And what if you had even more ways to connect with the teams, artists, and other creators that you love? Even though creators make the internet valuable, how much value do they get for their work? Well, that's mostly up to a few big tech companies. Shouldn't creators get more from the platforms they make successful? More value, but also more say, more control, more ownership? Read, Write, Own explores an alternative future for the internet, one that reclaims control for creators, fans, listeners, and gamers, the people who not only use the internet, but make it useful. Read, Write, Own imagines an internet built by us for us. So order your copy of the book today or learn more at readwriteown.com.
Welcome back to the Ringers NBA Draft Show. Today, we're going to be doing a redraft and re-ranking of the 2022 NBA Draft class. We're going to get into what we've learned through one quarter of the season, implications for teams, what lessons were learned, and what it might mean for the 2023 class. And of course, we're going to be getting into what teams would change their minds if the draft were to happen again today. I'll be alternating choices with J. Kyle Mann. Hey, Kyle, what's up? How are you doing?
Well, yeah, I was wondering when you were going to say hey to me, man. I was just like a starving plant over here and needed some water.
Just want to introduce our little theme here today because it is early for a redraft.
It is. I was going to say, what did you say to the people who are like, it's too early, you know, because like there's MVP things going on really early.
Yeah, I mean, it's early, but I think it's also, you know, we're at a natural part of the season. One quarter of the season has pretty much passed right now. It's a good time to check in. See what's going on with some of these rookies, seeing what's going on with some of these teams, and also just kind of spin it forward and talk about what it might mean for 2023. So for this redraft, re-ranking, Kyle, who's going first? You pick.
Let's pretend we flipped a coin. Ding. Kev, why don't you go first? I think that's the best way to go.
All right. We'll start off here. In reality, the Magic picked Paolo Banchero with the first pick. I'd still select Paolo first, regardless of team. I had him number one on my big board. I think Orlando made the right choice. Thus far this season, he's averaging 23 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and fitting in ways that you may not have seen at Duke with the amount of usage that he has right now. He's 6'10", fluid like a guard, with shifty crossovers, still plowing through defenders, lowering his shoulder. I think the difference here with what we're seeing from him with Orlando compared to Duke is the spacing aspect. And that's helped unleash Banchero out of isolations and pick and rolls. He's got Wendell Carter, Mo Bamba, or a Bol all spacing from 3, whereas at Duke, Mark Williams was that interior, threat for some lobs from Banchero, drop-off passes, but Banchero's averaging 1.07 points per isolation, according to Second Spectrum. That's 19th out of the top 50 players to log isolations this year. So very good so far for a young player. Only going to get better as his jump shot improves. Banchero would still be number one, regardless of who's picking there, I'd say, Kyle. How about you?
Yeah, I think he's even solidified even more. I had Chet number one on my board, but Paolo was somebody that, I mean, I really, really thought about. It was closer than I would even have thought, but down the stretch, I think he's solidified himself. I mean, Chet hasn't been playing, so I mean, that's the big asterisk there that you could say. But I mean, I kind of feel like Paolo's game would have translated more quickly to he absolutely looks the part of the engine of an NBA offense. You're talking about he just looks comfortable with the ball in his hands, like the pick and roll numbers aren't like outstanding, but they're pretty good. I mean, he consistently looks comfortable. I was talking with a friend of ours just last night. He was even attacking like Kevin Durant off the dribble, and he didn't look scared at all. And having more weapons, I think you're right. Having more weapons, that's something that from college to the NBA, people will kind of ding heavy load kind of ball handlers, like Cade Cunningham kind of had things like that. It's a different story when you get in the NBA and you have real legitimate, options that can hit shots and can finish,
And with Orlando, so many of the pieces are interchangeable. Like they really play positionless basketball with Franz Wagner. He's another guy, 6'9", who can run pick and roll or be as a screener or a spot-up shooter or a cutter or a guy who's playing in the interior. Never mind on defense what he does defending multiple positions. I think with Orlando, they're just able to put Banchero into every position on the floor. I mean, he does everything for them. And you mentioned him attacking Kevin Durant. Like shortly before he got injured, I remember he had, a bunch of amazing buckets in his game against Houston. And I was rewatching those recently. He has one where he just plows through Garuba, who's, a big husky center, and he just buries him underneath the rim, spins and dunks. And then he's facing Eric Gordon, who granted he's older. Banchero looks like a guard. Like he crosses over behind his back, looks like he's going to go into a step back jumper for mid-range, but then he just blasts right past Gordon with his quick, explosive first step and dunks over the whole defense. Like he just has all these skills in a 6'10" frame with speed and athleticism that helps allow Orlando to do what clearly they're trying to do, right? Like they put out their lineups with Bobo, Wagner, Banchero, Bamba, and then a fifth guy out there. I mean, like they play with size and length. They're like Boston can do that, where Marcus Smart might be the smallest guy on the floor, but he's got like a near 7-foot wingspan. OKC in the West with what they're trying to do with SGA or Dort. And with OKC, obviously, number 2 was Oklahoma City. So, might as well go next, Kyle.
I'm picking next. Obviously, between the two of us, I'm the natural choice to pick second. Chet is still 2 for me. Don't need a big explanation here. We haven't gotten to see him. And this is kind of, I don't know, would you say we're still kind of just ranking performance, or we're more just sort of like, have we hedged our bets on players a little bit? Because there's some players that haven't totally performed. Chet hasn't performed at all, but I still feel confident about what he'll be when he comes back, right?
I look at this exercise as kind of like a re-ranking, right? Like where would we put these guys on our board? I'd agree with you. I didn't have Chet 2. I had him 3 behind Jabari Smith. I'd move him up to 2 right now as well. Where I still think Chet, I still think OKC would pick him. I don't think they'd change their mind at number 2. Despite the injury, I think he fits with the profile of what they're trying to do. Can you imagine if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander also had Chet Holmgren either spacing the floor for him, protecting the rim on defense, rolling down the lane, a secondary facilitator from dribble handoffs from the elbow area? Like Chet could fill right in immediately with this OKC roster and enhance already what they're doing. I think SGA, as great as he's been, assuming Chet can come back and stay healthy, it's only going to make him better as the star, playmaker on the team. Isn't that the value in Chet? He lifts everybody else up.
Yeah, I mean, his contributions just go down. If you imagine the spreadsheet of what players do, the horizontal axis for Chet is just very long. Some players are really simple. Like we're going to talk about some guys in this draft that are very compartmentalized in their role because they're on a certain type of team, and that does matter when you're a rookie. Like what's available to you to try. But I do think that you hit it. I mean, Shai is probably, I mean, he and Ja Morant are probably the two ultimate downhill forces at the guard spot in the game today. Shea just is, he can slither into any situation and score. And he's been unbelievable this season. But I think that Chet could easily complement that in all the ways that they need. Like you said, he can get out of his way. He can get out of the paint. And I assume, I mean, we're assuming, we're projecting still like we were in the summer. We haven't really gotten to see it yet, and I still can't wait to see it. But yeah, I mean, he could space, he could play the high post, he could be a lob threat. And then on the other end, give you defensive versatility, which I think is something that they need.
A quick aside, is Poku going number 1 in the 2020 redraft, Kyle?
I think so, right? I think number 1 solidly.
Poku's been really good, though.
He's been better. He has been better.
He's way better.
He looks calmer, right? Like he doesn't look at... I love yakety sax Poku. I love laughing about like what the hell was that? That was some of the most fun stuff, and his just fearless confidence. But it's been nice.
He still brings it. He still brings that. He's just controlled.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote this down in my notes, and I feel like this is true because it kept kind of resurfacing for like all the way I was thinking about all these guys when we were talking about the rookies, and that is that like simplifying can be complex. This kind of idea for a rookie, like just figuring out it's like they're going too fast. They're making a lot of mistakes. And I feel like that's true for a lot of these guys. Like that's the thing about Paolo is that like he hasn't looked sped up. Like Suggs last year looked way over his skis, like in the first half of the season. Poku feels like he's slowed down a little bit, like matured a little bit. I'm sure the wildness is still there sometimes, but
no doubt about it. He absolutely has. So let's move on to number 3. In reality, Houston took Jabari Smith Jr. here. I'm going to be going with Benedict Mathurin. I had him 6th on my big board prior to the draft. That's where the Pacers took him in the actual draft earlier this year. So far this season, 19 points on 42% from 3 per game. Dude's been awesome, coming off the bench for Indiana. Not quite playing 30 minutes per game yet, but he's excelling regardless of the backcourt combination. Playing so well next to Tyrese Halliburton or Buddy Hield or Andrew Nembhard, another rookie, just had the game-winning 3-point jumper against the Lakers the other night. But Mathurin, I think with him, the main thought on my mind is his freshman year at Arizona, he played a role more like he has this year with Indiana, where it was playing off ball, spot-up threes, cutting. And then as a sophomore, he had the ball in his hands more often. I think he's a great example of the importance of fit because he's able to do the things that he simplifies the game, as you just alluded to with Poku, right? The game is simple for him right now. It is hit spot up threes, cut, attack closeouts, make the right decision, play hard constantly, sprint up the floor in transition. It's not like he's being asked right away to run the show.
Right.
There's other guys on that team who are helping aid him do that, whereas he can do that in spots. He can ISO when he needs to, but for the most part, it's just like they had him sprinting through elevator doors to hit a corner 3-pointer a couple weeks ago. They're running these off-ball sets for him that are really empowering him with his best skills. So, I mean, that just has me thinking so much about the importance of fit for how these players perform earlier on the season, because somewhere else he might not be doing this, and he might not be in the Rookie of the Year conversation.
Yeah. The third biggest piece of his offensive pie has been on ball, and he's been a little. And it's funny how like we will like criticize players for things that aren't necessarily their fault, and people aren't always like judicious about how much they or how far they go with like criticisms and things. Like, yeah, he's not super on ball because he's playing with good playmakers when he's in those lineups that are staggered with the starters, but he's still averaging almost 20 points in like 28 minutes. I was of the mindset that like I was a little dubious of him, and I had him a little lower than you did. But I also, the flip side of that is I did see the fit, and that it just plays into so much of how we see the players early on. It does accommodate him in a way. I thought he had a chance to win Rookie of the Year. I said in our like entrance survey, I was big on Paolo, but I thought that Mathurin was going to get the chance to win it because I thought that he would put up numbers, and he has off ball. Yeah.
Same thing for me with the mismatch. Like I said to Verno, I was like, our semi-bold predictions, I said, Benedict Mathurin wins Rookie of the Year. And he's like, no way, Banchero's going to put up big numbers. There's no way Mathurin's going to win. And I was okay, fine. Maybe he's top 2, top 3, right? So I think you and I were of a similar thinking there. And That also speaks to just what Halliburton's turned himself into. I mean, as of we're recording this Tuesday afternoon, his last 3 games, 40 assists, 0 turnovers.
I saw Haralabov tweeted that. I was like, are you serious? That's crazy.
The dude just does not make mistakes. With Mathurin, it's interesting because he was the guy prior to the draft. When I talk to NBA executives and scouts, they're like, he's the guy like I feel like could end up being the steal. Like he was always the name people brought up because of that ability to play with and without the ball. The 6'6", athletic, hard worker, all that stuff. He checks all those intangible boxes. And it just has me thinking about this upcoming draft class. Are there any prospects that kind of might fit that mold where they're not going to be a top 5 guy, but they could have steal potential? I know it's early for this, but like a Keontae George from Oregon, we talked about him in our introductory episode. He's more
Baylor,
of a 2-guard. Yeah, he's more of a 2-guard. Somebody like that, not running the show, but he can do a little bit of both in the NBA. Anybody come to mind for you, Kyle?
That has like the scoring aggressiveness. I mean, I feel like we've kind of circled back about this here and there. I mean, we touched on Terquavion Smith a little bit, who has a little bit of that dynamic offensive game that can go on and off the ball. The thing is like playmaking bend. I don't know that if you're going to compare to Mathurin, I think you have to think of it that way. Like I think you need to think of somebody who's kind of has an appetite for scoring mainly or first of all. So I don't know that I would put like Dariq Whitehead, I don't think is going to be seen as a steal. I think he's going to be pretty coveted. Guys that I don't know. I'm trying to think of the radar last season. Was Mathurin like projected top 10 from day one, or did he kind of sort of gradually work into that? I don't
gradually worked in, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess just using that to kind of look at who you're looking at on the board that could move up there. I've always kind of thought of Proctor as more closer to the middle in terms of the scoring playmaking. But yeah, I mean, Terquavion's somebody that comes to mind, I think. But he's a deferring kind of personality. Pretty like, when he came back to school, he wasn't. Mathurin is like, he just is a super, super, supremely confident guy about his offensive ability.
Who you got at number 4?
Okay, Kev, get ready to make your jokes and your comments. I'm taking at number 4. I don't know. I'm going to do it. I kind of have that like little queasy feeling in my stomach. You know what I mean? I'm going to pick Shaedon Sharpe at 4.
Oh yeah, baby. Let's go. That's my guy.
I don't think that there was a shift in my eval. Nothing has happened where I've been like, oh shit, like, wow, never seen that before. We've seen it all before. What has shifted for me is I'm inching my like confidence dial, if you imagine it like is a thermostat. I've turned it. I'm doing it with my hand. You can't see it, podcast listeners, but I've turned it ever so slightly, like my confidence rating. That's where I am on Sharpe right now.
I rewatched your video and you're right. Your evaluation was on point. I think you're
right. It was on point.
You had a line. You had a line somewhere at the end in there where you said how fit will be so important for him. Landing in a situation with the right surrounding veterans. I mean, isn't that what he has in Portland? Right? Like this could not be a better situation for Shaedon Sharpe.
Yeah, and I mean, you've seen it in his production. I mean, he's very like, I think we should clarify that you were talking about parameters and getting chances. What would Sharpe have looked like if he'd gone to a team where they were like, hey, here's the keys? It would be an outright disaster. And we've seen in terms of his, like on the season, I mean, he hasn't been good from the line, hasn't generated them really, he's been okay. It has hovered in the 60s, but 8 points per game on the season. 0.5 assists, but 40% basically from 3. But in the last 5 games, Portland's kind of regressed to the middle a little bit more. Dame's been out. A lot of his offensive existence has been in cutting and catching and spot up situations, which he's been awesome. I mean, like his physicality looks awesome at the rim. I love when he gets up in the air. Like he had a play on Mason Plumlee where he took the contact and just sort of like weighted him out in the air and finished over him. But he's like the shift in Portland's offense has affected him a little bit in the last 5 games. He's only been at 2.2 points and he's shot 0.077 from 3. Just hasn't been there. I feel like his skill set has kind of responded to their star power. And when it wasn't there, he's just kind of the water's been shut off offensively for him.
it'll be interesting with him over the course of time. One of the things that we had a slight disagreement with Sharp prior to the draft was I think I was higher on his playmaking potential than you were. His playmaking has not been good for Portland. I mean, he's got 9 assists, 14 turnovers, not looking to pass a lot. And granted, that's not his role and responsibility. It's to be a guy scoring buckets off of secondary actions, kickouts, cuts, just like you said. I'd like to see him, do a little bit more of that. Also need to see him extend his range shooting off the dribble. He's only 27% from 3 off the dribble compared to 39% off the dribble from mid-range. Small sample size we're talking about here, but it does follow a trend with what we saw at lower levels. Hopefully that can improve for him over time. But I love Sharp, man. I mean, I think that dude's going to be really good. I had him ranked 4th prior to the draft. I think for the Blazers to get him 7th, that'll go down as a steal. We one guy that's fallen so far in our little re-ranking here is Jabari Smith. I would take him 5th in our re-ranking. He went 3rd to Houston. In reality, I had him 2nd prior to the draft. I'd bump him down a little bit now, and that's not to say anybody should be out on Jabari Smith. It's been a struggle for him so far. 11 points per game, 34% from the field. He's a negative assist to turnover ratio, not finishing plays efficiently inside the arc, not creating much of anything. The one concern on my mind is this, Kyle, when it comes to the 3-point jumper. We know he can defend. That's not going to be a concern long term. He made 42% of his threes last season at Auburn. 32% so far from 3 with Houston. But according to events tracked by Cerebro Sports, 30% from 3 and all other competitions since he's been 15 years old. So the number we're seeing this year with Houston is a lot like what we saw at the high school level, not at college. In the back of my mind, I'm wondering, despite the touch from the line, what if that Auburn season plus 40% was actually the outlier and everything else is actually the norm? There's some Cam Reddish vibes there, I'm saying. Cam, same thing. Oh, the shot looks gorgeous. Looks so good. It's going to be falling. He just needs to be consistent. Well, what if it's the same thing with Jabari Smith? That's all.
That's a good take. I mean, I haven't heard anybody really scrutinize it like that. I mean, around the draft a little bit, but I feel like most people kind of were won over, I think, by a shot. Throwing that into the mix is interesting here. It's just kind of it's the thing where I think you're right. Defensively, I think he's gonna be fine. I've always been a believer in the defender. He's really smart. He's committed to it. He cares about it. Which is a great thing to see for a two-way player like that. The other thing is something that we brought up, and you brought it up, and this is something Chark's really worried about with him, was 2-point percentage, second to last among rookies who played 10 games at 36.7%. The easiest, basketball is complex in some ways, but simple in others. It's sort of a call and response sport where a pressure and then attention and then a pressure release, basically. And he needs to have that in his game, because if he's not going to, the handle has been a little shaky. That's a whole aspect of him that you were talking about Brandon Miller for Alabama, and I was saying that's a thing that Jabari just doesn't have. Brandon has looked good, but Jabari just hasn't shown us any of those things that we were worried about before coming in the draft. So it's just going to be a long road for him to add those things, I think.
You mentioned Brandon Miller. That's something when Brandon Miller had his really great streak of games over this past week for Alabama. A lot of people on NBA Twitter compared him to Jabari Smith, right? For better or for worse. Some people saying, oh yeah, because he's tall, he could rise like Smith did. Big shooter, versatile defender, but then you had other people pointing to that 2-point percentage, whereas, Jabari Smith Jr., not much of a creator. Brandon Miller, shooting 33% inside the arc this year. I mean, I really like Brandon Miller. I currently have him number 3 on my board. I'm not married to that. He might end up 7, 10. I have no idea. We'll see.
Yeah.
By the middle of June. But are there any parallels between those two, though? Miller and Smith, or are they just in a different, type of player?
Big and shooting. I think that would be the two things that I think overlap
the most.
Because when I watch Miller, I just see he's not. I need to go in and watch some of the inside the arc shots if I'm gonna parse it, closer with more detail. But you just see Miller doing things and getting in situations that Jabari just. I was telling you, there was a play where Miller snaked a pick and roll and had a guy on his back and had a lob available and a corner kick available to him. Jabari would have just crumbled into ash if he had been like he couldn't have or disintegrated into ash, mixed metaphor there, but like Miller is getting in those situations and Jabari's just not there yet. That's a whole
I agree.
Unexplored continent for him. And anyway, that's kind of
totally agree. And just to tie this back to our conversation last week when we were talking about Domantas Sabonis and players who could be used in handoff situations and all that, we didn't mention Brandon Miller because he's not a big, he's more of a forward type, but he had this pass last week out of like the high post area with his back turned, and he just whipped it over his head right in the shot pocket to a corner 3-point shooter in the opposite corner. And it was a missed shot, but it was right on the money. And it was just like kind of like made me, scratch my beard a little bit like, could he be used like that in the NBA where he has the threat of an outside jumper, he can handle well enough, and he has that playmaking vision that Jabari Smith doesn't, which is another concern with Jabari, where if he's not shooting at an elite level, like you better be bringing something else on offense. And like, would you agree with that? I took him fifth. Like, we still get Ivy on the board, Keegan Murray, Eason. There's a number of other guys. Daniels goes in the lottery. Duren. Is Smith at 5 a little too high right now, Kyle, or is that just the right spot considering we're only a quarter of the way in the season?
I think we're putting a net under him because of the things that we saw at Auburn. We're still like holding out, like, the impact of the shooting not translating. I think we're betting, like I said, we're not doing
Houston still take him at 3 then? Does Houston still take him? They redraft today. Number 1 is Paolo. Number 2 is Chet. Does Houston still go with Jabari Smith with the 3rd pick?
Oh, that is so tough.
Are they going Mathurin and having him and Green in the backcourt? Are they going Ivy? What are they doing?
I got softer on Smith if time had gone on, if the draft had been like further down the road, I probably would have talked myself into putting him in the 5 range to begin with. So I know that they still believe in him. I think that the Houston's roster is still so imbalanced and raw and chaotic a lot of nights that it could impact. Jabari's the type, he has like a responsive skill set the same way Shaden does, honestly. And to answer
opposite of Mathurin being in a great situation, right?
Yeah. I mean, we see that. So it's like you always have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. Now, if we circle back and do this in March, maybe that net isn't solidly there. Maybe more data comes in and we're just like, I'm really worried.
Yeah.
But to talk about like the Brandon Miller, like as a screener thing, like, I mean, I don't think that that's unrealistic. Like you were talking, I'm not trying to make this a Brandon Miller thing, but I feel like all the rules, it would depend on him, like how effective he'd be as a screener. The passing thing, I know, but the rules for who screens who, Kev, have been basically dismantled. I feel like in the last 3-ish years, that movement is a huge thing in the NBA.
There are no rules anymore.
Right.
None. Who do you got next at number 6, Kyle?
I would take Jaden Ivey here. What's your immediate response to that? I thought you had some thoughts.
I mean, he went 5th, in reality. Here he goes 6th. I'm sure the Pistons would love to take Mathurin instead of Ivy if they could redo it. I like so? Ivy. Yeah, I think so.
Do you think he's lacked that much? Because I was kind of wondering, in the outline you said Killian Hayes has come to life as sort of a little, and I got stroking my beard and thinking, why would Kevin be patient with Killian Hayes and not Jaden Ivey? I just found that interesting.
I'm not impatient with Jaden Ivey. I'd take him here too.
Okay,
I would take him right here too. Why would I be patient with Killian? Oh, I wonder.
I would just found that interesting.
I wonder.
I'm not ready to punt Jaden into the sun just yet.
I'm not ready to punt Killian Hayes either, averaging 11 points on
you're ready
30,
to softly
30.
Rub his head and say, there, Killian.
Take your time, Killian. Don't stress out too much.
Don't listen to them.
Take your time. Don't look at Twitter. And if you do, just don't worry about it. Use it as fuel to be better.
Turn the filters on, Killian. Don't worry about that -5 BPM. It's fine. It happens all the time with my other guys. Frankie Smokes. Actually, don't think about Frankie. Let me say,
so don't think of the French. Don't think about them. No.
Just don't think of the French in general.
Killian, just know you can defend. Know you can pass. You're just going to figure out how to score. And so does Jaden Ivey.
Exactly. Good segue.
Ivey needs to figure out how to slow down, right? That's about it. We know he can create space. he needs to figure out his shot selection. He's taking some real bad shots this year, man. Like early clock, deep twos. Just stop it.
Yeah, their whole like calibration offensively is off. I was talking, Cade's
They're tanking.
Well,
like,
yes.
Go ahead, keep shooting, Jaden.
Yeah, keep jacking them up there. Figure it out.
Get those reps, kid.
Yeah. No, I think it's all kind of out of whack. A, because the thing that's supposed to be their central anchor point, Cade, A, he's out. B, he just is shooting like shit again. And it's like that kind of throws everything off, like in terms of like the consistent flow of space in their offense, And I think that Jaden projected to kind of, that's not an excuse for Jaden. He, in terms of his pace, is just all out of whack right now. But he is doing the things that I thought that he, like downhill, he is still really exceptional, like in terms of like turning the corner on basically whoever's in front of him. But he's just a little predictable. I was watching Steph Curry just like put his whole hand on the ball when Jaden tried to drive because he knew he was trying to get to his right hand. He always does that thing where he'll drive into your chest and then try to spin to his right hand. He's a little predictable, taking bad shots, just all those things. I'm still fine with it. I think it's going to be okay.
I think these are like typical point guard growing pains.
Yes, I do too. I thought you were going to make some other point there.
It's just typical. I mean, we've seen this time and time again with young guards. They learn how to slow down. You hope they learn how to slow down, I should say. They don't always. But I think Jaden Ivey, I have faith. You got to be patient with him.
Yeah.
Moving on to number 7 here. I'm going to go with Keegan Murray. Kings got him 4th in the actual draft. I had him ranked 8th pre-draft, so I'm moving him up here very slightly. Just to make it clear, his last 6 games since he came back from a back injury, 6 points per game on 27% from the field, 14% from 3. He's been horrible ever since he came back from that back issue. I wonder how much of that's been a factor for him, because early in the season and in preseason and in summer league, he looked really good. 12 points per game on 39% from 3, making smart decisions, playing good on-ball defense, a little spacey off-ball. That's been a challenge for him to get used to playing that role in the NBA for the Kings, but they had him coming off handoffs, whirling towards the basket, taking movement threes off of screens, setting screens as a pick and roll in the pick and roll, using the pick and roll as a ball handler. I mean, he looked exactly like the guy that the Kings hoped to get at number 4, which was somebody who could help them in their playoff push right away. So these recent struggles, I'm not going to overreact to those at the moment, but they are, at least worth consideration. I think it could be related to the back, but we'll see over the course of time as this season develops.
Yeah. Last 5 games, 15% from 3 on 4 attempts per game, 6.6 points. Yeah, not so good. But I mean, the luxury that he has is that that's okay for now. That the Kings have a machine. You and I were talking about back in the summer when we projected what the Kings were going to be. It has just worked. Sometimes you project something and it seems like it's going to work, and it does. So he still is in a position where he's going to be icing on the cake for them if he rounds back out and starts to play well. I still think he will. Back is just a tricky thing with basketball, especially when you're that young. I don't like to see that, but I think that's fair. I think Keegan Murray is gonna even out.
Would the Kings still take him 4th? I think so.
That's a good question. I was a fan, and I think I've said this on this show. I was kind of the mind that there were some players there that would fit. We talked a lot about like, does fit matter there? I think we went back and forth. I really thought Dyson Daniels could help them. I kind of liked him going to the Kings there because he's younger. Maybe not as like polished as an off-ball scorer as Keegan, but he's younger. Like we've said too. What if Dyson Daniels had played a couple years at Iowa and had a similar usage? How would he have grown? I think he's more of a passer too. That was one that stood out to me as somebody, or even Sharp. I mean, from what we've seen of Sharp, I wonder if they're kicking themselves for not taking him.
A younger upside player who clearly for Portland still can do some of the things that you need from a role player. It's interesting with Keegan Murray, his brother Chris Murray, kind of replicating what Keegan did.
It's like identical.
It's wild. He goes from doing just a little bit off the bench to averaging 20 points per game and shooting the hell out of the ball. It's kind of weird, how the Murray brothers have followed that same trajectory.
Yeah, it's Fran McCaffrey over there just kind of churning out the same player over and over again. I wonder if he's like calling the Murrays and asking if they have any cousins that are 6'8". Yeah. Chris is just he looks like somebody to keep an eye on for that reason.
Yeah.
Next at number 8, this is another case of me. I'm not ready to hedge too much here. I'm holding pat. I'm standing pat with what I thought before the draft because I haven't seen enough to dissuade me based on the situation, and that's Tari Eason. I'm going to take him at 8.
Tari Eason. So in reality, he goes 17th to Houston. Now we have him at 8. What's behind the rise here for Eason, Kyle? Like, for a lot of listeners might not even know about Tari Eason's game.
Tari Eason projects. I think he and Jabari actually defensively, I brought this up to you at one point, that I think that he and Jabari project to be like a really, really, really fascinating defensive tandem based on how the league is going. If you look at like on the offensive side of the ball, like Franz and Paulo are really unique. I'm not going to act like it never happens to have 2 big wing defenders like this that can guard bigs and wings, but Tari is like an assignment-driven defensive guy, whereas I don't think that Jabari necessarily is. Like, I think Tari is going to be able to guard some of the like bigger playmakers in the league. One of the guys that he's guarded the most this season is Paul George. Now, Paul George has given him an education on many occasions. It's been pretty funny to watch. And Tari's been a little sleepy sometimes off ball, maybe not as attentive, but he has shown his physicality and athleticism have translated defensively in a way for me that seems real. And he's been solid in spot ups. He's been 17 out of 41 for 41.5%. I'm not dissuaded by anything. I thought he was undervalued going into the draft. Charks won me over on that. I'm not moving too much on Tari Eason.
I had him 18th. Too low. I should have had him in the lottery for sure.
What do you think you underrated?
I mean, the shot has definitely translated right away for him. Despite Houston being, I mean, they're terrible on defense. They're 28th ranked, but it's not Eason's fault. I mean, he's been good individually, like you said. I think with Eason, man, like it's like you said with Sharp, I'm happy with my evaluation. I just underrated the value of what he could bring. And like I favored some of the younger guys. Like I had Malachi Branham ranked ahead of him. And I had Johnny Davis ranked ahead of him. Usman Jang with OKC. It's like some gambles on younger guys who may not end up better. Like if I think one thing that's been on my mind when it comes to draft rankings is there should be, this is like a contents idea. There should be rankings for if you're a contending team and if you're a rebuilding team, or if you're a team that wants to take a home run swing, or if you're a team that wants to take a more certain approach. Because if I were ranking prospects based off the certain approach, Eason would have been in the top 10.
Yeah.
But if you're doing a general board factoring in home run swings, guys that might not work out, but you want to take an opportunity on them, then you bump him down a little bit more, because I don't think he has star upside by any means.
No, I don't either.
No, but he's a very, very good player, a versatile defender. Like, and the energy he brings, dude, like it's contagious. Like Houston does not have guys who can like catch that, contagious energy right now. But the dude's like jumping passing lanes, causing deflections, chasing loose balls out of bounds, pounding his chest and screaming. And Houston's just racking up losses one after the other, right? But I mean, if this were a winning environment for Jabari Smith and Jalen Green and all these guys, I feel like he's an energizing force. Part of me is almost disappointed he ended up with the Rockets, because he could offer that to a winning team right now, today.
Yeah, he could be annoying. I don't know, like holding up in like a high level scheme. We need to see that. I think he's more sort of on an island taking assignments, like I said, but I think it'll get there. He doesn't have the on ball stuff like Wiggins, but he has some like Wigginsy like physical stuff defensively. Like they profile similarly to me. And Wiggins had to have like sort of a renaissance in his career at one point, as we know. People criticize his personality for just being kind of passive. Tari's not passive, but some of the sort of lapses in attentiveness, I think, are similar. They kind of remind me of Wiggins a little bit defensively.
So with our 9th pick, I'd be taking Dyson Daniels here. New Orleans got him 8th in reality. Why would you take Eason ahead of Daniels right now? Like, what has he shown to kind of give him that edge, or what has Daniels not shown yet that he needs to for you to kind of raise him up your evaluation? Because he's the younger guy.
I've seen some things from him defensively that I really liked. He had a couple of really nice plays last night against OKC. Not as good as Herb Jones, but pretty good. I think it's more of a just balancing your value. I love Dyson Daniels. I was very high on him. I won't say higher than anybody I know, but I mean, I felt like I was in the higher threshold with him because I thought the Kings maybe should have thought about him, like I told you. But I think that it's just valuing philosophically archetypes of players. I value guys that can check. It's harder to find guys that can legitimately check and bother big playmakers than it is to find connective playmaker shooters like Dyson Daniels. It's not like they grow on trees, you know, but they're out there. So that was kind of my philosophical lean there.
The one thing that could give him an edge for me over some of these other guys is if this jump shot is for real. Right now, he's shooting 47% from three, only 8 of 17, tiny little baby sample size, only 67% from the free throw line. But he's working with Fred Vinson, the same shooting coach who helped out Brandon Ingram, who helped out Lonzo Ball. And the shot looks good, man, right? Like, I think it looks better. He looks more confident. They work together every practice before every game. If that's for real, if he's at least like a 37, 38, 39% three-point shooter after not shooting the ball well at all in the G League, that's what's going to give him value as a guy who can play off the ball, because we know he can pass. Like, that's what he did all year for the Ignite, playing next to those guys last year, including Scoot Henderson. Like, when I talked to Scoot when we went to the Ignite Mets 92 game, Scoot said, I said, how would you describe Dyson Daniels to somebody that's never seen him play? And he's like, oh, he's like Magic Johnson.
That's really great.
Yeah,
I love that he thinks that way of him. Like, that's fun.
He's like, he's tall and he can make every pass. And it's like, he's not Magic Johnson, but Daniels does have a real knack for passing. So if the shot develops, that gives him offensive value regardless of situation and lineups. And then defensively, like, we already saw him giving trouble to Luka this year early in the season. I mean, he's strong, he plays hard, he's got good fundamentals. I just hope Willie Green, continues to give him regular minutes, because I think he can continue to be a real contributor to the Pelicans like he has been during their real recent strong stretch.
Yeah, the size thing, his body can fill. He's getting ready. I mean, he's going to turn 20 here soon, in like 3 months, I think. But yeah, absolutely. The shooting thing, again, sometimes you project things and it's early, like you said. That 3-point percentage number is pretty gaudy. That's why I laughed.
17 attempts.
You said 47.7. Yeah, the four. It was sort of like a series of double takes. You said 4, and I was like, oh, 40. And then you said the 7. I was like, whoa. But yeah, that sample size.
The real way to say it is, so far he's 8 of 17 on 3-pointers.
Sure. Yes.
Don't mention the percentage. You can do the math in your head if you want.
Sure. He's in a great situation, and it's gonna, man, it's gonna be an incredible. Just the Pelicans are just lining up to. We were hard on them. We were hard on them with the Steven Adams and the Bledsoe stuff and the giving money, and they have really. It's been an incredible turn of events from a year. If you think about the way we were talking about them a year ago, and now they have this asset like Dyson Daniels that there's not a ton of pressure on him. And then they could potentially get a high pick in the coming draft. It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Nuts, man. Like right now, the Lakers. I mean, if that pick ends up, it doesn't even matter where the pick ends up. If that pick is 10, it's another quality talent for them to bring in. If it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, if that pick actually moves up in the lottery, I mean, my goodness, like, forget Victor Wembanyama. Just imagine adding, you could say, oh, we want Cam Whitmore. We want to add another wing. Oh, we want to draft Amen Thompson, a 6'7" downhill attacking playmaker. They had Scoot Henderson, a guy they can develop behind CJ McCollum. I mean, what? How were they in this position? Never mind the trades that they could decide to make using that pick, or if it blows my mind that they're in this position so quickly. And they're also one of the best teams in the NBA, by the way, too.
Yeah. Oh, footnote. Yeah. It's just when you just rattle off sort of the like consensus big board kind of cluster of players, and you think about these players, like you said, Amen Thompson. What if they added Nick? What if they added Nick Smith? What if they added Cam Whitmore? What if they added Keontae George, Dariq Whitehead? Like, there's just in this
Anthony
draft
Black.
specific.
Any of them.
In this draft, look, why don't we just have a roster full of connective 6'8" playmakers? Let's just bring him. Come on down. I mean, it's just crazy.
Isn't that what they're doing though, Kyle? Doesn't it seem like that? Aside from CJ McCollum and Jose Alvarado, aside from those two guys, the bucket getter and McCollum and just the defensive pests and Alvarado. Besides those two, this is all length. Everybody on the roster positionless.
Yeah, you think about Trey Murphy, who I pushed down too far because of my philosophy. I thought his playmaking upside wasn't high enough for me to value him super high, but he's been unbelievable and he's a monster. They could just, especially in this draft, dude. What a just fortunate turn of events for them. I mean, to get Zion number one, and it seems like the defense is another thing. The Pelicans are just in a great spot. It's really kind of unprecedented fortunateness for them.
I don't have a lot of faith that the Lakers even make the playoffs.
Who does? Who has faith in that except sources in the locker room, Kev, right?
Yeah. But what an interesting report there. I mean, that's what this is going to turn into. That Dave McMenamin report on Monday, I believe it was, where he said sources in the locker room believe the Lakers are one move away. So LeBron, Clutch, AD, they probably believe that, right? Maybe a Patrick Beverly, some of the guys there do too. The front office doesn't feel that way. I mean, everybody I talk to in the NBA, unless the Lakers make a real push before the middle of January, their expectation is that the Lakers will go into the offseason, reassess. They'd have the ability to use 3 first-round draft picks because the Pelicans pick is a swap. They'd receive that. So they get 3 first-round draft picks and a bunch of cap space to make moves then, which would be obviously advantageous for New Orleans because they'd get their pick this year. But I unless the Lakers really get through this tough upcoming stretch with a long road trip, a ton of good playoff teams, they're facing Milwaukee and Boston, Toronto, Philly, Denver, Phoenix. It's a lot of tough teams coming up after beating San Antonio 3 times and Detroit. I mean, please, this recent win streak, nice. Got some wins for them. They're 7-12. They blew that game against Indiana. I just don't see this trending well for the Lakers, and I see that as the greatest blessing for the Pelicans franchise because they could do literally anything on the trade market or keep the pick and do anything they want in the drafts. It's an amazing position to be in.
Do you think David Griffin is smoking a cigar right now, wherever he is? I'd imagine he has a Cuban cigar in his mouth. He has to. Is he wearing a bathrobe?
I think I don't think he's celebrating yet. I don't.
Yeah.
No, I mean that. I don't think he is. I think he in the back of his mind still thinks the Lakers make a move because they might. Maybe LeBron and Clutch and that pressure wins out because LeBron and AD especially is playing outstanding basketball. LeBron has struggled as of late, but if the Lakers make a move, they'll be better and they'll push for a play-in spot, and that hurts the Pelicans. But hey, whatever. Still in a great spot.
I'm sure he's thinking about that. All right, let's do the next pick. All right. With the 10th pick, I'm going to take a shooter, AJ Griffin with the Hawks. AJ is fitting in. You're talking about roles. This is a narrow parameter for him to come into. If you're talking about touches on the Hawks, we were talking about the Kings. Keegan was going to slot into a role that was pretty defined. Same thing for AJ. Touches on the Hawks are spoken for. It's pretty even at the top with Trey and Deontay at 19%, and then Collins and on down the line. AJ gets the 10th most touches. They are pretty much all spot up. He relocates a little bit, gets in the lane. Floater game looks good. I always say this, man. He is the widest base on his 3-point shot. He dips it way down.
It looks too wide to me, but it works.
Whatever works, dude. I mean, it goes in. He's been a great shooter. It's translated as a 3-point dribble pull-up shooter. He's been 38.9, box plus minus at 1.2, 8.4 points. He's just playing a role and doing it really well. And I think that that's going to be a thing that he can do well as he continues to grow.
I thought that game-winning lob he had against the Raptors a couple weeks ago was such a cool thing for him because he had such a great game. Playing good defense all night long against OG. He deserved that moment. Granted, it hasn't been great for Atlanta since then.
Yeah. But they got a nice asset here with AJ, I think. Yeah.
I totally agree. And he ended up going 16th. So rising up here, I'd agree with you, Kyle. I'd have him in the same spot. Jeremy Sohan, Spurs, they took him 9th. In reality, I had him 9th on my board. We have him going 11 right here. I love watching Sohan, man. Like, really, the only thing he needs to do is figure out how to shoot. That's about it. For San Antonio, he's at 18% from behind the arc right now, but this dude does just about everything else. There's no fear in this guy. Like, whether it's a good play or a bad play, like, he has done a good job against Damian Lillard, sliding laterally, battling on ball. But then he had a play against Zion. Remember the play Zion flexed after kind of burying Sohan underneath the basket?
He does it to everybody, but yeah, I don't know that I'm thinking of it off the top of my head. Yeah.
Yeah, but Sohan kind of like stuck to Zion like glue on a drive. He's just like, every step with him, and this Zion kept plowing through him.
Yeah.
Dunked the ball, flexes at Sohan, who fell to the ground. But it was like a no quit mentality. Like, whether this guy has success or he fails in the moment, he just never backs down. So I think with Sohan, like, granted the Spurs suck right now, he's somebody that you could build with long term. And like Russillo tweeted out a couple weeks ago, I don't care about the numbers with him. This guy is a winning player. He makes a winning impact. He can pass, makes the smart decisions, hustles. I really like Sohan. If he can figure out how to shoot, that's going to open up everything else for him.
Yeah, I was telling you, I think one of the big conversations I think going forward will be about Sohan versus Eason in terms of like what types of defensive tool. I think Sohan's feel for the game, I think, is way more advanced. He's a better passer. I think he's a better team defender. He's relentless. He doesn't necessarily have the exact physical tools that Tari has. But I agree with you. The numbers aren't going to be, especially on this team. And man, there's so many good young defenders. Like, the game is just in a good spot on that front. We talked about like the shooting and stuff going up. I don't know that gets talked about enough. Sohan, he projects to be an excellent defensive player for a long time in the league, in my opinion.
Who do you get number 12?
Number 12, speaking of guys I believe in, not moving too much on him, Jalen Duren. Jalen it's going to be one of those Tatum cliches where we're going to like talk about how young he is forever, that he is a baby. One of the things that I have thought about with him is if you look at what I project, and I think that he could become, I think he could be like a deep weak side roamer who can clean things up. He's about 6'9". I don't know if he's really his size. At times I've wondered. He didn't measure at the combine, so we don't know exactly, but we know he has some long-ass arms. He closes on the ball super quickly. He's built like a rock. He's looked like a man in the lane. Kind of reminds me of like when Amari was a rookie, how like Amari just would power through people's arms. Like, he didn't look like he was a kid. I believe in, like, if you look at where Robert Williams was as a rookie and you look at what Duren is now, I think he could follow the same developmental track.
Couple things I want to comment on. One, the size aspect. Like, he's listed at 6'10", 6'11". He doesn't look that tall to me.
He looks 6'8.5" to me sometimes.
I agree. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So that kind of surprises me that he has that measurement. But the other thing is the Robert Williams comp, I think, is smart because obviously the shot blocking, the above the rim finishing, but it was against the Kings earlier this year where he set a pick and roll for Bogdanović, short rolls. Defense rotates over, pressures him, and he just made this perfect kick-out pass to the right corner to Killian Hayes, who nailed the three. That's, of course, why I saw the play. But it was just a perfect...
There's a pattern here.
It was a perfect on-target pass off the short roll, and I love short roll playmakers, and it was just a little preview because we've seen signs of that from him where he had, like, Time Lord was never touted as some playmaker, but I always liked his passes at Texas A&M. He made quick decisions. Duren very much the same way, where I think that could be the thing for him that is an additive skill. It's not the main thing, but he helps keep pieces together, which could be valuable for a team that has multiple ball handlers, whether it's Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, Killian Hayes, or Bogdanović, or whoever might replace Bogdanović at his age someday in the future. Having a center like Williams is for Boston who can help keep those pieces flowing, that's of the utmost importance. So that's been very encouraging, I think, for him early on this season with the little moments we've been able to see from him doing that.
Yeah, and it's important. Like, he came in, Williams came into the league like a year and a half or so, a little older. I think he was 21 after like playing 2 years at A&M. And I think that, it took a minute. We started talking about Williams. Maybe in the bubble, I feel like, was when Time Lord people were like, okay, he's a dude. This is a guy. And now we're at the point where we're like, man, when Time Lord comes back for the Boston, they're going to be unbelievable. So I just think that there's time. And he's on a team where offensively, sometimes to me, he looks a little lost. Like his life is pretty simple, and that can even be too much for him at times. But defensively, I'm still pretty confident.
Up next at number 13. I'm going to go with Walker Kessler. He went 22 in reality, so have him rising up into the lottery here. I might even take him ahead of Durant. Granted, he's 3 years older. I just love what I've seen from him with Utah. 72% from the field, finishing everything around the basket and not just like dunks, tip-ins. He's like catching the ball on the right side of the rim, taking one dribble, finishing on the left side. It's like some coordinated finishes, off cuts and dump-offs and all that. Defensively, we know how great he was in college, Defensive Player of the Year. He's been awesome in 15 minutes per game for Utah off the bench, according to Second Spectrum, allowing only 0.9 points per pick and roll defended by Kessler. I just love what I've seen, man. Like, he looks good. He's averaging more blocks per game than Rudy Gobert. I mean, like, that's a stat Chris Vernon said on the Mismatch on Tuesday, and it's just the truth. And that's only in 15 minutes per game that this guy is dominating on both ends of the floor within his role as the rolling center on offense and the rim protector on defense. I love what I see from him.
Yeah, I would like to see like block percentage per, like him as a rookie, Rudy as a rookie. The Rudy thing, that's just a whole other conversation.
7.9% block percentage for Walker Kessler as a rookie right now. Gobert as a rookie was 7.4%.
Whoa! How about
Very
that?
Interesting. Wow,
it is interesting.
Good call there, Kyle.
Intriguing.
Yeah.
My nose started to twitch. I thought something was there. I was going to say Duran is 0.958. So that's an interesting guarding as a screen defender on picks. That's an interesting parallel between those two guys. I think they're different types of players too. Not that we need to compare them directly, but I mean, Kessler is just a guy. He's just so big. You're talking about size. He's just huge. I mean, like. You can park him there and have him sort of not have screens switch above him and have him not switch and just have him stay at the back. And he's just so big. He's just a deterrent, man. Even the shots he doesn't block, he's looked good. I mean, he's one of the real stories. I think. I know it's not the sexiest, most exciting thing. Like I was saying to you, but his ascension, I think, is one that maybe the consensus was off. Like the fact that he can just do these things simply by his size.
Are there any guys in the 2023 draft that could have a, rookie year impact like him? I mean, we talked about Filipowski pretty recently on the podcast. Is there anybody that projects that rim protector type in the middle of the first round, late first round? Kel'el Ware, he might end up falling to the middle of the first round.
He's one. Kel'el Ware is one that came to mind. Neither of us expect Kalkbrenner to be playing at that level. I mean, no. Colin Castleton is a guy for Florida that I think is interesting that we haven't really talked a lot about. He's also very big, not quite as big. I don't know if I have the long. I mean, Zach Edey is somebody we need to talk about too at some point.
I like Zach Edey, Kyle. I'm a fan. I'd take him in the second round.
Really?
I would. I like Edey.
Oh, second round. Yeah, second round. Yeah.
I mean, look, it's similar to what we talked about earlier. Edey in a redraft, for what it's worth for listeners who don't know him, he's a Purdue 7'4" massive dude, right? He's gigantic. He's like Boban, huge.
He's like Yao. I mean, he's gigantic.
Just huge. He's the type of guy that he probably doesn't get selected in the first round, but in a redraft 5 to 10 years from now, I think he'll be like a top 30 guy.
Oh, okay.
That would be my prediction with Edey. I think if Boban could be in the league for 10 years, Edey's going to be in the league for 10 years. He has way more offensive skill. It's
true. And it's weird that Purdue is like, there's some like Purdue. I know at the Ringer we have to say this because that's what it is technically. That it fits this description. It's some weird Ewing theory stuff going on with Purdue where Ivy leaves, and it kind of reminds me of those Utah Utes teams where like Van Horn left and then they still went to the title game. I digress. But
they're undefeated right now, right?
Yeah, they kicked the shit out of Duke the other night.
Yeah,
they're just an interesting team. But let's see.
Number 14 up next.
I'm up, and this is the last pick, I believe.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to stick with Jalen Williams. That's a guy that I was really high on. I will say The qualifiers here, Jalen Williams, 6'6", out of Santa Clara. We've all heard it if you follow the draft. Point guard skills, he can shoot it. He's been a better finisher than I thought he would be in the league. The weird thing about him is that the shooting is the thing I was most sure about, and it's been bizarre. Jalen Williams has been weirdly worse on open shots than he has been on contested shots. Now, he did get hit in the face. I think it was Kyle Kuzma elbowed him in his orbital, and he broke it and had to wear a mask. I was asking our buddy Tyler Parker if that maybe had something to do with it. I haven't looked in there mask shots versus non-mask shots. But I still believe in it, and I still think that he fits the mold of somebody that can help. He can just fit in anywhere. You talk about a herder type. Or we talked about that last week. I think Williams is one of those toggle either direction. And in limited minutes, he's averaged 9.8 points per game, but 26.8% from three, 18.2 in his last 5 games. So not good. It's been a little worrisome there. But I'm not budging, Kevin. I'm not leaving. I'm not fucking leaving.
Okay, Leo. I would honestly take Williams ahead of Kessler. I just wanted to make sure we got Kessler in here.
Oh, you would too? Okay.
Take him ahead of Durant for that matter, too. I really like Williams. This dude, he's going to figure out the shot. He will. The playmaking ability that he developed in Santa Clara and his time there, that's translated already. Obviously he's not the lead ball handler there, but this dude makes smart passes, off secondary actions, attacking closeouts, finding another open guy. He defends.
He's a second side guy. You got it. That's what he is. Yeah.
Not a primary. Yeah. And that's a high level one to have. Maybe long term, the best role for him is an annual 6th man of the year candidate, right? Where he's not starting, but he's finishing games. Where SGA, Chet, whoever they pick, they're the guys starting for you. But then Jalen Williams can slide in, help lead the secondary, unit, finish games as more of an off-ball guy. I love his versatility, man. And it was cool and kind of unsurprising to see him rise into the lottery. But that means we've had some names here that have fallen off. Johnny Davis went 10th to the Wizards. He's had a horrific start to the season in the NBA, been a little bit better in the G League, but not like he's popping there. It's not like Jaden Hardy, who just got called up after going 37th to Dallas, who was kicking ass, 29 points per game, nearly 50% from 3. Hardy crushing it.
And the Mavs need him. Good God.
They need him badly, dude. But he should be playing. I don't trust Jason Kidd at all. I said this to Chris Vernon on Tuesday's Mismatch, but it's I don't trust that Jason Kidd is going to give this kid a chance at all. He's going to keep playing his vets, Hardaway and Bullock. Please.
Hardaway has been a disaster. Yeah.
Terrible. Johnny Davis, though, on high alert right now. I'm a little concerned, but is there any reason to be out on him, Kyle? Is there any reason for optimism with Johnny Davis? Where are you at with him? And where were you with him prior to the draft as well, just to give some context?
I like Jalen Williams a lot better. I was softer on him, honestly, on Davis. I just didn't see enough to make me think that. I just get leery of these 6'4"-ish guards that I don't know, it's kind of like the Book Knight thing. I was a little worried about him too in that draft. I was softer on him. I can't remember the exact number. I know I had Williams 9, but I can't remember where I had Johnny off the top of my head. Yeah, he got some minutes. I think he got some minutes last night in that blowout. Not that you can glean anything from that Minnesota-Washington game other than Minnesota has problems and they're missing people, but not totally out. But I'm not as willing to go to bat and say I'm not budging like some of these other guys because I just haven't seen enough.
I agree with you. The concern with him, granted, he wins Big Ten Player of the Year, 31% from 3 last year, very comfortable from mid range, needs to extend his range. It's the lack of confidence that it seems like he's playing with right now. Very timid. Everything that he's doing, he seems hesitant. So hopefully he can improve over time. A couple other guys I want to mention here. Ousmane Dieng, for OKC, another lottery pick. We don't have him right here in our top 14. I could still very well see him rising up with his size and length. Maybe there'll be opportunities over the course of the season to play for OKC, but he's getting minutes right now in the G League. Marjon Beauchamp with the Milwaukee Bucks gets selected in the 20s. I'd like to see him get some more regular minutes. I'm not so sure Budenholzer's going to give him. But granted, he's not hitting jumpers. I like the way he's defending. I like the way he's cutting. Is there any chance Beauchamp ends up the guy who's contributing in the playoffs? We always see a rookie who pops in the playoffs. Does Beauchamp have those qualities, or are you not putting a lot of stock into that right now, a quarter into the year?
I don't know about this year, man. I just don't know that it's going to happen. Granted, he's a little older than you would think. Isn't he like 22?
Yes.
Yeah, which is kind of like, I pick a side, Kyle. I'll say no. I just don't see it right now. But eventually, I mean, he's shown flashes. The shooting at times was pretty good. I know he shot it pretty well in the summer league, if I'm not mistaken. But it's going to take a little bit of time, I think, with him. But he's in a good situation, and no hurry.
In that case, who's most likely to contribute in the playoffs? Christian Koloko with the Raptors, Andrew Nembhard with the Pacers, just saw him at the game winner, Christian Brown with the Nuggets, who's played some spot minutes for them. Who's most likely to contribute in the postseason then?
Well, I mean, Koloko's been getting run on a legitimate playoff team, and there's different pressures on him that aren't on those other guys, and that I think that Koloko's capable of doing. It was cracking me up watching Koloko guard Evan Mobley last night, because he was just Mobley was giving him all the little. Mobley's the savvy vet now. That would be what I would say right now. Yeah, what would be your answer to that?
I mean, Nembhard right now, if the Pacers make the playoffs, seems like he's going to be fixed in that rotation. He has Carlisle's trust. But I really love Christian Koloko. I liked him prior to the draft. I had him ranked top 20 for most of the year, and I forget where he ended up. Let me check where he ended up real quick. I ended up having Koloko 28th, dipped him down a little bit closer to the draft. I'm happy with that ranking overall.
Yeah, I was late first. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, solid player, great rim protector, lob threat. I think he'll continue to play for them, but I'll go with Nembhard because he has Carlisle's trust right now. If we're going to pick a playoff performer.
But the rest of this list, this redraft flattens out, or like we really, it was just like, I don't know how you would rank these guys, honestly, because they're just, it's such a minefield of like, Wendell Moore's not playing, Pat Baldwin's not really playing. Yeah. Ty Washington's been spending most of his time in the G League. I know they really are confident about him, airing it out there. So it's just kind of there's not a lot of heavy playing time among this run here.
Yeah, I think once you get to 14 at that point, it's like, okay, all right, we'll wait until later in the year to do a top 30 redraft.
Sure.
Kyle, this was fun. Any other lingering thoughts about this 2022 class and what it might mean for 2023 or the rest of the NBA season, whatever is on your mind?
Oh, man. I mean, I like this class. There's a lot of, it's a cliche and kind of bland thing to say, I guess. I mean, it's a very talented group. There are guys in here that I think could move up. Like I mentioned, Ty. I still am not, out on him. I've seen some little flashes from Bryce McGowan, actually. I saw a little bit from him. LaRavia, I like as a shooter. There are guys out there. There's nobody that's just like, a monster. There's not like a guy lying in the weeds that I think is going to ascend into this group. But I don't know. It'd be interesting to revisit this and see how the board shakes up a year from now.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, Kyle. This was a lot of fun. Good early season, way too early redraft. Kyle, I look forward to next week. We'll be talking more college basketball next week. Hit on some more prospects with some new stuff we've learned.
Yeah, I was going to say after we finished our ranking, I was just going to the finishing thing I was going to put on it was carry the hell on. Just like Kendrick. Yeah,
carry on.
Yeah, carry the hell on. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it was fun.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. Please do us a favor, subscribe, follow us wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave us a rating and review. Thank you to Jessie Lopez for producing. Hope you have a great rest of your day.